Was Nick Saban wrong for accusing Jackson State of giving the top football recruit $1 million to sign? Was he wrong for doing that? Did he defame Deion Sanders? Did he defame Jackson State? Was he just being gripey because he missed out? Stay tuned. We're going to talk about that in just a minute.
That Corbin and Corbin legal team fighting for the rights of the people. That father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal. Providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it. Exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas. Working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective. A team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom. Investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbett, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple. To obtain a favorable outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
Hello, legal rebels. This is Attorney Augustus Corbett, a.k.a. the Minister of Justice. And with me I have...
Attorney Chloe Corbett, a.k.a. the Duchess of Justice.
And we are the Defiant Lawyers. We provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system. Come on, subscribe, like, share. You know it's good. Every time you tune in, something powerful happens and you are empowered. You are informed. And sometimes you're even entertained. Chloe, all that said, how are you today?
I am doing so good. Happy Saturday to you, Dad, to all of you. We have a special topic. We have a special guest. I'm so excited to do this broadcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. And since you have let the cat out the bag, yes, we do have a special guest. We have Carrington Vaughn with us today. And Carrington is very special to us in several ways. I actually met Carrington through my son, Caleb. He visited the church a couple of times. And he was just an impressive young man. And he ended up becoming an intern for our law firm, I think the summer of, was it 2019, I think?
Yes, heading into 2020.
That's right. It was before the pandemic. I remember that.
Yes.
And so Carrington is with us today, and that's because Carrington has a unique background. He recently graduated from law school, and he also played Division I football for the University of Arizona. Am I right about that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Very good. So we asked him to join us today because I believe he can make a contribution to today's topic. Today we're going to talk about Nick Saban, Deion Sanders, name, image, and likeness, contracts, and HBCUs. It is a great topic, and we're looking forward to this conversation.
Yes.
Now, let me give Carrington a proper introduction. So like I said, Carrington is a former football student athlete, again, at the University of Arizona. And he's also a recent graduate of their law school, University of Arizona James E. Rogers College of Law. And during law school, Carrington acted as president of the Sports and Entertainment Law Society and head research assistant for the Arizona Edge program, which created a college course to educate Arizona student athletes on the workings of the newly enacted name, image, and likeness legislation and strategies to establish an effective sports brand. All right, so there it is, and here he is. Carrington, how are you today?
Corbin and Corbett, the Defiant Lawyers. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Thank you for the invitation.
You were the perfect person we thought of to join.
I'm
We
so happy
just,
to be here.
yes, the knowledge that you're going to bring to this topic, we know that everyone listening is going to be benefited from the information that we share. And it's important because we're going to be talking about this topic from the Black perspective, especially
Right.
as it relates to HBCUs. And I went to a HBCU law school, so this topic is very dear to my heart. Got a shout out to Thurgood Marshall School of Law.
I went
Love
to
it.
an HBCU undergrad and law school, North
Got me
Carolina
beat.
A&T State University and North Carolina Central University School of Law. So it means a lot to me as well. And shout out to Deion Sanders
Yeah.
Big shout
for
out.
becoming a head coach there at Jackson State. All right. So we got a big topic today, and it's trending, and we want to get into it. And we want to say hello also to all of the legal rebels who have tuned in. Looking forward to their input, their comments and questions and so forth. They're always very insightful. So we are grateful for that. Okay, let's see where we're going to get started here. Just a minute. I think a great place to start here is, you all can't see the screen, I don't think. Well, you can see it because you're logged in, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
All right, so I just pulled up Deion Sanders and Nick Saban. First of all, Carrington, what do you have to say about, I mean, what are your thoughts about just Deion generally as a football player, as a head coach, and then what about Nick Saban?
Deion Sanders, an amazing two-sport athlete, awesome broadcaster, man of God, champion. And to see him at the HBCU level, spearheading the direction of their sports leagues and pouring into those young men, I think is one of the most amazing things that's happened in sports in the last decade. Along with the fact that his sons are with him, so he's a family man. And just the biggest part is him being a man of God and man of principle, of tradition, and one to put himself out there and to speak on behalf of Black people. I think it's amazing that what he's doing. He's a role model for me. He's a role model for athletes. He's a role model for businessmen. Period. In terms of Nick Saban, he is a great coach. Works at a storied program, University of Alabama. Champion. He's put a lot of men in a lot of athletes in great position in terms of their athletic careers. He's given opportunities. He's given scholarships. In terms of what he said, do I agree with what he said? No. Do I think that they were lies? From my perspective, from what I've heard from Coach Sanders, they were untrue, and I'm not an advocate of untruthful and lies being told, not only in regards to people individually, but in terms of universities that have established themselves, and especially like Jackson State, who have implemented amazing growth, not only to their regular students, but to their student athletes as well. I think what his comments were an affront to that university. Not only was it wrong, but it was insensitive. And when you target a specific player like Travis Hunter, even though he's a great athlete, he's still a young kid, and I think it's unfair to put someone on blast or be untruthful, because he's affected as well. Not only is the university affected, but his personal life, his familial life. And I just think those comments were insensitive, and I think they came from the wrong place on Coach Saban's end.
Very good. And I failed to mention the most important thing about Carrington. It's great that he is a graduate, a law school graduate of a great university, former student athlete, all that's great. But most importantly, he is a man of God. He is a committed Christ follower. And so, Lord, forgive me for even not mentioning that first, because that's the most important thing. So, Carrington, I just wanted to get that out there. Anything you want to say about your faith before we move on?
Well, God is my everything. I try and be a man of principle, grounded, keep my faith first, and allow it to guide my professional career and my relationships with people. Character is the most important thing with me, and I plan on taking my character into the profession, doing right by people, being an advocate for Christ, and leading people to God through all of my actions, my words, and deeds. And so that's definitely the biggest part of my life. So thank you for mentioning that.
Absolutely. All right. Chloe, what are your thoughts about Nick Saban and Deion Sanders? You are the rose among thorns, but football and sports is a huge part of our family. So I know that you are pretty much engaged in this as well.
Yeah, I grew up watching football, playing sports, playing basketball. I was on the basketball team in my high school. And of course, Deion Sanders was a big figure to me as well, because even though I've never been a Cowboys fan, Mom was. And when we lived in North Carolina,
she
we stayed
abandoned
in
them now.
tune. We stayed in tune with the Cowboys. And Deion Sanders was one of her favorite players, as well as Michael Irvin. So he was always someone that I looked up to, both on and off the field as well, just as a previous athlete myself. And I've kept up with him, as Carrington mentioned, through his broadcasting career and what he's done off the field. But what really made him stand out to me recently, with him accepting the head coaching position at Jackson State University, is how he's attempting to educate his players on how to use their money if they do make it to the professional level field. He was recently in the news a few months ago for talking about, basically trying to show his players how to avoid quote unquote gold diggers and how to use their money to invest in
Yes,
themselves. And I know, Carrington, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
He invited someone, a woman who's famous for dating a basketball player and getting some of his money allegedly. So he wanted her to come and talk to his players on how to avoid all of those.
That's breaking news for me. Getting some of Deion's money?
No.
Oh, okay.
He invited a woman who married a basketball player.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, they divorced. And there were accusations that she only married him for his money.
Okay.
So he's trying to teach his players, if they make it to the professional level, how to use their money and how to avoid those trappings that a lot of athletes fall into. So I was impressed with that. Like, he's trying to mentor them off the field as well, financially. And then you have the fact that, Travis Hunter, the top player in football, decided to forego all of the other Division I programs and choose Jackson State University is huge. And to me, and just for people who don't know what the comments were, so Nick Saban basically went on a radio.
Hold on. I do have a video of his comments. Okay. So we can play that. Before I do, though, Chloe, you go ahead and finish your comments. I got a picture that I want to put up here. In fact, let me just do so right quick. Hold on. Let me see if I can get to it. Let's see here. Right there. So there he is, the man himself, Carrington.
Oh, that's not me, Mr. Corbett.
Oh, come on, man.
That's not me, sir.
That's not you.
That's my friend. That's a friend of mine. That's Cody.
Oh, wow.
That's not me. It's all right though. It's all right though.
It actually said you.
Did it?
And you know what? When you said that, I noticed that your number was 28.
28, yes, sir.
Oh yeah,
28. It's all
it
right.
actually said it was you. I'm going to put up a picture of you before we get off this. Okay. I
Okay,
want to put.
Google is something else.
Yeah, I'm going. The problem is when I found some pictures, they got to be the right side and the right size and all that. So anyway,
Yeah,
I tried, man. I tried.
I
I tried. I
appreciate it.
tried.
It's the thought that counts.
I'm going to have one up before we finish, though.
Perfect.
All right. Okay. So let's see. All right. So let's go ahead and listen to what Nick Saban had to say.
Equal. Your scholarship is equal. They get equal Alston money. They get equal cost of attendance. They get equal academic support. They get equal medical attention. Everything has always been equal. So I told our players, I said, we're going to have a collective, but everybody's going to get the same amount of opportunity from that collective. Now you can go earn however much you want. And I tell the recruits the same thing, because our job is not to buy you to come to school here. And I don't know how you manage your locker room, and I don't know if this is a sustainable model, because one of you folks are going to give some player that comes to our school a bunch of money to come to our school. And then you're going to come to the game in full strut, thinking, I'm going to tell everybody I got that guy to come to Alabama. And then he's not going to play, and he's going to transfer, and you're going to say, I'm never going to do this again. All right, so I don't know how it works. I don't know how you sustain a model like that. Now, I know that we're going to lose recruits because somebody else is going to be willing to pay them more. But name, image, and likeness is something that's here. And I think the more supporters that we have for the University of Alabama in all sports, that are willing to sponsor players, whatever you want to call it, use them in your business to help your business, that's going to help our programs. The thing that I fear is at some point in time, they're just going to say we're going to have to pay players. If we start paying players, we're going to have to eliminate sports. All right, and this is all bad for college sports. I mean, we probably have, 450 people on scholarship at Alabama, whether they're women's tennis players, women's softball players, golfers, baseball players, non-revenue sports that have for years and years and years been able to create a better life for themselves because they've been able to get scholarships and participate in college athletics. That's what college athletics is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be something where people come and make money. And you make a decision about where you go to school based on how much money you're going to make. You should make a decision based on where you have the best chance to develop as a person, as a student, and as a player, which is what we've always tried to major in. And we're going to continue to do that. And hopefully there's enough people out there that want to do it. But I know the consequence is going to be difficult for the people who are spending tons of money to get players. And you've read about them. You know who they are. I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it. Yeah. So it's tough, and people blame the NCAA. But in defense of the NCAA, we are where we are, all right, because of the litigation that the NCAA gets, like the transfer portal. Every time somebody wanted to transfer, they'd apply for a waiver. All right, if the NCAA didn't give them a waiver so they could be immediately eligible, they filed suit. So the NCAA would back off and give them a waiver. So they just said, we're just going to make a rule where everybody can transfer. That's how that happened. So if the NCAA doesn't get some protection from litigation, whether we got to get an antitrust or whatever it is, from a federal government standpoint, this is not going to change because they cannot enforce their rules, just like Nate said. We have a rule right now that says you cannot use name, image, and likeness to entice a player to come to your school. Hell, read about it in the paper. I mean, Jackson State paid a guy $1 million last year that was a really good Division I player to come to school. It was in the paper, and they bragged about it. Nobody did anything about it. I mean, these guys at Miami that are going to play basketball there for $400,000, it's in the newspaper. The guy tells you how he's doing it. So But the NCAA can't enforce their rules because it's not against the law. And that's an issue. That's a problem. And unless we get something that protects them from litigation, I don't know what we're going to do about it.
Okay, there we go. Now, let's try this again. Aha. What about now?
Let's see what we got. That's me. There you go.
Got it
All
right.
Yeah.
All right. All
That's
right.
me.
We got it.
Yep. That's me right there. Good old time.
Woo.
That red hits.
Yeah. There you go. Against ASU too. Arizona
Wow.
State. Fourth
Is that a
down.
big rival?
Yeah, that's the big one right there.
Okay, excellent. You were what, a linebacker?
I played linebacker, yes sir.
Middle, outside?
I played middle and outside. I was a pass rusher. So a lot of third down packages.
In Division
blitzing off the
I
edge.
football. I
Division
mean,
One.
yeah, big Arizona. Wow,
Yeah, it was exciting.
excellent. Sounds like a lot of spilled milk to me, what I heard coming from Nick Saban. Sounds like someone who's just getting beat at this recruiting thing now that the rules have changed, and he doesn't like it. And so he's just now beginning to throw some mud. Now, before we go any further, let us go back, because a lot of folks don't have any idea what we're talking about. And so we need to go back here a little bit and lay a little bit of foundation. So let's do that. Let's start out talking about the U.S. Supreme Court case that turned everything around. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so let me just make a few comments about it, and then you all just chime in and with your young minds and take over.
Absolutely.
All right, that case, NCAA versus Austin, 141 141 Supreme Court, 2141. So essentially, the plaintiffs sued the NCAA. The plaintiffs were some collegiate athletes, student athletes as they are called, amateurs. And they alleged that the NCAA violated Section 1 of the Sherman Act. And the Sherman Act is the federal law that protects the country from monopolies, basically. And so these student athletes alleged that the NCAA had created a monopoly. They were making a bunch of money. They were controlling the money, and the players weren't getting anything. And so they sued in federal court. The lower federal court issued an opinion that sort of split the baby. They prohibited the NCAA from limiting education-related benefits, but they allowed the NCAA to continue with all the other regulations. I see a typo there. The case was appealed to the Ninth Circuit, California Circuit out there, very liberal circuit, but it affirmed the lower court's decision, and the NCAA appealed to SCOTUS. And Justice Gorsuch, I read every page of his opinion, wrote the opinion for the majority. In fact, it was a unanimous decision, and affirmed the Ninth Circuit and the lower court's opinion. And had that been it, maybe the NCAA could have continued its jig, I would call it. But that wasn't it, because Justice Kavanaugh wrote a scathing concurrent opinion that basically excoriated the NCAA and just some very, very strong language, and essentially warned the NCAA that if another case and this issue came before the court, they would likely rule against the NCAA. And so immediately the NCAA began allowing students to profit from their name, image, and likeness. So that is a really brief synopsis of what got us to this point. And so you all at this point chime in.
One thing I want to ask you, Carrington, can you explain what the NCAA is, and can you give your opinion on the NCAA changing their policy and allowing athletes to use their name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, so the NCAA is a huge association of colleges between the Division One all the way down to the Division 3 level, and then there's NAIA schools that have their own separate conglomerate. But in terms of the NCAA, they mandate specific rule set for everyone who's a part of this association. Each player has to abide by, and each school has to abide by specific regulations. If they don't abide by those specific regulations, then they are basically ousted and excluded from all the championships that are provided within the NCAA organization. Prior to NCAA v. Alston, players they were amateurs, amateur in nature. So that means they were not allowed to earn any compensation outside of the academic money that's provided by the universities, while at the same time, they were not allowed to start their own businesses. If they did that, then that's a violation, along with other regulations in terms of drug testing at the NCAA level and at the specific college level. And now that Alston came and reversed these regulations, players are now able to earn money outside of the allotment of money that they're provided for room and board and tuition. Cost of attendance is basically what it's called, which provided for not only a covering of their tuition, but it also provided a stipend, which is cost of living. So, and each state has a different cost of living. So each university can give their players a specific allotment. Like I came into college as a preferred walk-on, so I was not on scholarship. I had to go based off of FAFSA. That's the money that I had allotted to me, while other players were getting their tuition paid while also getting their stipend per month. So at our school, the stipend was $15.50, and if you're staying in the dorms, it will be less. So you probably get
hold on. $15.50, is that $1,550?
$50. Yes,
Wow.
per month.
Mm.
Per month. And if you lived in the dorms, then you probably get about $950. And one of my biggest learning lessons was seeing how the players that were.
Wait a minute, Carrington, hold on. You said $15.50 per month, right?
Yes, sir.
Was that above the tuition?
That's outside of the tuition.
Okay, that's outside of tuition, room, and board. In addition
Right.
to that, you got $15.50 to take care of your personal needs, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's varies, but depending on the state. And
Now, one other thing, was that for walk-ons like yourself, or was that for scholarship holders?
That's only for scholarship holders.
Okay. So what did you do? So before you got the scholarship, you got whatever you were able to get through FAFSA.
Correct.
Okay.
And so most players, thank God that I was in a better position in terms of having my family and different things like that. But I see other players who come in and have to get jobs on top of, practices, on top of academics. They would have to go and get night jobs to accommodate for their lifestyle, which is a very difficult thing. I know for myself, I was pretty frugal, and I banked on this thing called Cat Cash at Arizona. It's most students get a card where they can go and get food from the student union. That was one of my big things. My parents would just put a bunch of money. And what's funny is even some of my best friends who were on scholarship, they'd run out of money because they didn't know how to manage their money. So by the time you get to 2 weeks from the end of the month, all their money would be gone, and they'd be asking me to buy them food at the student union. But some of these guys, one of my biggest learning lessons was seeing even guys who would blow their money. They would just go and buy dirt bikes, or they would, buy, drugs or whatever their lifestyle was, going out, partying, and different things like that. And I was able to see that. And by the time I got my scholarship, I was able to be a little bit more smart with how I manage my funds and different things like that. But what I love about, there were some, smart players as well who stacked their checks and invested in different things like that. So I don't want to leave that minority out. Um, but one of the things I love about Alston is some of these guys, if you don't go to the NFL, you're done. So even if you were a champion and you go to a Penn State or you go to an Ohio State or one of these massive universities where you're the star in that city or in that town, you could use your name and your brand to kind of leverage and make more money because there's a small percentage of people that get to the highest level of the sport. And so what I love about Alston is there's people who were able to film on YouTube their college experience and make a lot of money, but the NCAA made them cut it off, saying that they can't make any money outside of the sport. But if they're able to build that brand and that marketing capital and commercialize themselves, why wouldn't they be able to do that just like a normal student? The restrictions on compensation were utterly unfair while the NCAA is making billions of dollars off of these players, making $1 billion off of March Madness,
Mm.
off of 1 month. And it was just extremely unfair. And knowing that majority of the players are African American players, I think that Alston and allowing these players to go out and make money, and even with Coach Sanders using his own popularity at Jackson State to get his players noticed and be able to make more money, I think it's great for not only Black people, but it's great for these universities.
All right, so you brought up a very critical point, and that is an overwhelming, disproportionate majority of these athletes are young Black men and women. How many? And by the way, I didn't ask if I could use your image just a moment ago.
Oh, yeah. There you go. You get my NIL right there. That's my NIL right.
But how many what would your guess be in terms of how many of the football players when you played were African American?
So out of 105 active roster, about 65, 70.
Mm.
But that's because it's Arizona. But if you go to the SEC in those southern schools, it's 85, 90% of the players are Black. And then you'll have the kickers and quarterbacks, and a select few, wide receivers that are white as well. But for a majority, it's Black inner city kids.
All right. Now, we still haven't explained exactly what NIL means. Okay, Chloe, help us out with that. And Carrington, fill in.
So NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. And it really goes to what it sounds like. So the first part is the ability of an athlete to use his or her name and make money off of that name through contracts with various companies and entities. And then you go to image, the image of a player. And that is what you brought up of Carrington, Dad, when you showed him when he was on the field. That was an image of Carrington with another player. So an advertiser, a company could use the image before Austin and before some of these changes that the NCAA have put into place. They could use the name of a player to make money. They could use the image of a player, a picture of a player to make money, and they did not have to pay that player for the name and image that they used. And then you have the likeness of an athlete, and that's a pictorial or a graphic of the athlete. Some sort of graphic or picture could indicate their likeness. And again, these companies, the NCAA, were making money off of the names of these players, the images, their likenesses, and the players were not making any type of money off of that. Now with Austin and what came out, the NCAA has changed this policy. And you mentioned how fast it was that the Supreme Court came out with that opinion, I think in June of 2021. And then literally a week later, the NCAA put out a press conference making those interim policy changes based on that. So they were quick to do it because they don't want to get sued again. And then the Supreme Court actually just eviscerate any type of control they have over NILs. And I do want to read a part of the press statement that the NCAA put out once Austin came out. The president, Mark Emmert, said, quote, "This is an important day for college athletes since they all are now able to take advantage of name, image, and likeness opportunities. With a variety of state laws adopted across the country, we will continue to work with Congress to develop a solution that will provide clarity on a national level. The current environment, both legal and legislative, prevents us from providing a more permanent solution and the level of detail student athletes deserve." So, with hearing that, Carrington, how important is it, do you think, especially for African American athletes, to be able to use their name, image, and likeness opportunities to make monies and provide for themselves and their families?
Well, it's extremely important. Most of these players, a scholarship is all they have to get out of where they are at, and so they're leaving home to go to these universities. Yet they're leaving behind so many people that they care for, cousins, mom. They like to send money back to their family members, and they're using their athletic talent, their discipline, their structure to get these things done, and for them to be able to make a little bit of extra money from a deal with an automobile company or with a protein company, something that fits their lifestyle, it's on point, it's relevant, and it's something that they can leverage going into their career. It also is an opportunity for them to start their entrepreneurial endeavors, teaching them how to do their taxes, how to operate with agents and lawyers prior to going into the NFL, where we know a majority of those players lose out on their money because they go in and they don't have any financial training. How to file taxes, what is a contract, how legally binding is it? All these things are just going to improve their competency as people, and not just a pawn for the NCAA to use on Saturday and on Thursdays in their games. And I think it's terrible for people to go against the opportunity for these athletes who are students as well. They're taking away learning opportunities of the normal student. And so these black men and women getting the opportunity to make that money, it's going to lessen the burden on them while at school, and possibly open up opportunities for them to uh, uh, have a better thought process in terms of their classes. But it's also helping their families who have sacrificed a lot for them to even get there.
Now, what I want to do is I want to pull up a portion of Justice Kavanaugh's concurrent opinion that really motivated the NCAA to make these changes. Let me see if I can get it up here. All right, can you all see that?
See it now.
I can see it. Yep, it's there.
Okay, so I just want to read a paragraph here. This is not the actual majority opinion. This is the concurrent opinion. Judge Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion, but Justice Kavanaugh agreed with him strongly, but added his own opinion here. And it says, everyone agrees that the NCAA can require student athletes to be enrolled students in good standing, but the NCAA's business model of using unpaid student athletes to generate billions of dollars in revenue for the colleges raises serious questions under the antitrust laws. In particular, it is highly questionable whether the NCAA and its member colleges can justify not paying student athletes a fair share of the revenues on the circular theory that the defining characteristic of college sports is that the colleges do not pay student athletes. And if that asserted justification is unavailing, it is not clear how the NCAA can legally defend its remaining compensation rules. Ouch. I mean, that means get this together and get this together fast, or we're going to take care of it if it comes back before us.
Right.
Justice Gorsuch majority opinion was really sort of legally technical about the Sherman Act and antitrust laws and so forth. He did, in that opinion, adopted an approach to future cases involving the NCAA that put him on notice as well. But Justice Kavanaugh made it very clear. If this issue comes back before us, you all are going to have a tough time. We may gut all of your rules. So you may want to be proactive right here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I want to ask you this, Carrington, because it seems like if the case goes back in front of the Supreme Court, based on the concurrent opinion from Justice Kavanaugh, may go beyond even just allowing students to
Exactly
do NIL deals, but may even allow student athletes to pay for play. Can you explain the difference between using NIL opportunities versus being paid to play for these colleges?
Great question.
Well, NIL is outside of, they can't use the university's name in their endeavors. So with NIL, it's them being completely separate from the university, using their own built marketing value to, commercialize their personal name and their personal image. Now, in terms of revenue share and possibly, pay for play, that would take them out of the amateur category. So they don't want that to go back before the court and then that be, ruled on, because that brings in, the possibility of them forming unions and different things like that. And the NCAA basically having to carve up all this money that they're making and going where it should rightfully go, the talent. These, even though they're students, they're people performing. They're high performing athletes. Some of these people are going to go on to make millions and millions of dollars. But right now they're restricting their compensation. So with NIL, the only distinction is they have the ability to go out on their own, separate from the university, to make money, rather than the court ruling and saying that the universities themselves have to give the players and their students a piece of the pie beyond cost of attendance.
All right, I want to read another part of Justice Kavanaugh's concurrent opinion. It says, of course, those difficult questions could be resolved in ways other than litigation. Legislation would be one option. Or colleges and student athletes could potentially engage in collective bargaining or seek some other negotiated agreement to provide student athletes a fair share of the revenues that they generate for their colleges, akin to how professional football and basketball players have negotiated for a share of league revenues. Regardless of how those issues ultimately would be resolved, however, the NCAA's current compensation regimen raises serious questions under the antitrust laws. I mean, really, they were sending a strong message, a very strong message.
Absolutely. The NCAA doesn't want to bargain with people they consider their students, bargaining with kids, basically, essentially, is how they see it. And the NCAA is a storied association. It's been here for years. And, they would have to relinquish that power that they have over these players, the opportunity to exploit them in every possible way, be it through merchandising, TV broadcasting, different events and different things like that. And they don't want to intertwine themselves that much. They kind of want to just be an umbrella over the whole system. And so relinquishing that power, they would, I don't know, you might as well just disperse the NCAA at that point if you have to have a CBA at that point, or a collective bargaining agreement.
Now, what the court, I think, would like to see happen, what SCOTUS would like to see happen, I think, is for Congress to do something. But at this point, Congress has not done anything about this. So what has happened is the states have begun to pass their own NIL laws, And since we are licensed Texas attorneys, I wanted to bring up Texas version of NIL and take a look at it. And let's talk about that here after we read this. All right, name and image and likeness, Texas SB 1385. And it reads, this is the actual law. This was passed shortly after the NCAA made their rule change. Texas jumped on the bandwagon out of fear of losing athletes, and it enacted pretty quickly their own NIL version. And it reads, this is just part of it. An institution to which this section applies may not adopt or enforce a policy, requirement, standard, or limitation that prohibits or otherwise prevents a student athlete participating in an intercollegiate athletic program at the institution from, in other words, they can't implement rules, policies, requirements, standards, limitations that would essentially prohibit an athlete from earning compensation for the use of the student athlete's name, image, or likeness when the student athlete is not engaged in official team activities, as that term is delivered or defined by the institution, or nor can they prohibit students from obtaining professional representation. Very, very, very important. And if you remember, Nick Saban has something to say about that, right? So obtaining professional representation, including representation by an attorney licensed to practice law in this state for contracts or other legal matters relating to the use of the student athlete's name, image, or likeness. Goes on to say, nor can a university or an institution provide or solicit a prospective student athlete of an intercollegiate athletic program at the institution with compensation in relation to the prospective student athlete's name, image, or likeness. So a lot is said there. Let's break that down a little bit. It's kind of simple. I mean, it's what we were talking about. Basically, Texas says that an institution can not stop a kid now from profiting from his or her name, image, and likeness, as we have talked about, and you can't stop them from hiring an attorney or an agent to help them in that process.
Correct. I think one of the major distinctions that most states have put in is that they define agents and lawyers as a marketing agent. So it's a distinction from they can't get an NFL or an NBA agent. So the
okay.
agents have to redistinguish themselves because they're not professional, they're amateurs. They have to be entitled a marketing agent. And so you can, put in yourself with the Secretary of State. You have to be an agent in some fashion. But that marketing perspective makes it so that even family and friends, like parents who are acting as agents, they can do that without having to, become certified, with a professional sport league. So it distinguishes amateurism from professional sports.
All right, let me ask about that. Let me make sure I understand that. All right, so an NFL sports agent.
Yeah.
I can't think of one. Drew Rosenhaus. Isn't there someone named that?
Lee Steinberg, Drew Rosenhaus as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so those guys are registered NFL agents. So they
Right.
and with that sort of registration and licensure, they could not represent these kids.
Well, they couldn't represent under being an NFL agent. So for the NFL, NBA, MLB, they have to register to be an agent. For professional athletes, you have to register under the players' associations within each of those leagues.
Right.
And that's through testing and an official designation as that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to working with collegiate athletes, they have to redefine themselves as a marketing agent and not a player agent.
So, I mean, can they have both? Can they be both?
Not if they want to keep their eligibility under the NCAA rules and regulations.
So they got to be one or the other.
Right, but they can have a subsidiary under, they can still be an NFL agent, but whenever in their dealings with the collegiate athlete, they have to act as a marketing representative, because that's what NIL is. It's intellectual property. So you're marketing that player to these different companies
All
more
right.
so than you. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your thought.
Oh, well, more so than you negotiating a playing contract for that player.
Now, one of the things that Nick Saban mentioned was that some of the schools, Texas A&M, he mentioned, he alleged, and I'm not repeating that. I don't know about that, but he alleged that schools like that have created these collectives, right? So they join forces with these marketing agents, and those marketing agents will then help these kids with NIL contracts and sort of bring them to a particular school, right? So, I mean, what do you all think about that? I don't see where it breaks. I don't see where it violates Texas law, but is it unethical? I mean, Nick Saban took issue with that.
I don't think it's right now. I don't think it's unethical. I think all of this is a new developing space. I mean, it's been less than a year where the NCAA has implemented these policies and Austin came out. And I think that agents in the schools are trying to navigate this new area of law and this new policy on, okay, how can we make sure that we, keep our duties to the university to get the best athletes possible? How do we keep our duties to these students to try to help them provide for themselves and for their family and keep our athletic program up as well? So I think it's not clearly defined yet because, like you said, that there's no federal legislation um determining any of this. It's now states are coming in trying to make sure that athletes are not going to different colleges outside of their states. So I think it's murky waters. I don't think it's technically unethical because there's not anything really set in stone defined, because this is a new developing policy and area of law in relation to athletics.
I think it's ethical in nature in the grand scheme of things, but I do think it lets in bad actors. Whenever a school brings in a certain group or an entity to do that. So what they're doing is a lot of these schools are partnering under the table with different marketing agencies, and those marketing agencies within those states or within those college towns are basically essentially crowdfunding. This is what Nick Saban's talking about. They're crowdfunding money from different businesses and different boosters, which could bring unethical proportion because each school has different boosters and different things like that. But they're crowdfunding this money and then dispersing it to the players that they want. It's not connected to the university, but the university basically does kind of a handshake thing where these companies are going out and getting the money, putting the money together, and then either they're doing full team endorsements where everyone gets a check, or they're targeting a specific recruit and saying, hey, like, if you come here, I have these number of deals lined up for you where you can make this amount of money. So there's a player from the University of Pittsburgh. He's a wide receiver who is leaving the University of Pittsburgh to go to the University of Southern California, but he's going to make $3 million, and that is public information. But he's allowed to do what he wants. It's not necessarily. I think that's why they're saying that the game and college sports is kind of getting into murky waters, is because these players can transfer now and leave an institution. But I think it's fair.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, anytime you got the likes of a Nick Saban, who reportedly makes $9 million, who has assistant coaches who make in the millions, University of Alabama making hundreds of millions of dollars, I guess. And for them to sit back and complain about a kid making $3 million because he's transferring, again, it just sounds to me like it is folks who are complaining about the fact that their cash cow is being threatened. Now, I want to go back to something you said, Carrington, to make sure. And listen, we really appreciate you being here, and we're at the tail end of this. You're bringing some good insight to this topic. So, as I understand it, so let's take a school, ABC University, and let's say it's a huge school, Division I school, so on. And because of its pull, because of its alumni, because of its resources, it's able to network with some really big marketing agencies that are able to put a lot of money on the table for a recruit. Okay? So do you see, in the scheme of things, schools like that still having an advantage over a Jackson State or some other HBCU that doesn't have those kind of connections with those big marketing agencies and don't have the, the resources and so forth? Is it still ultimately going to end up being, something that's tilted in the direction of the Division I schools?
Yes, they still have amazing leverage. Think about how many fans that they have. They already have the
Now,
facilities.
why is that an issue? Why are the number of fans an issue?
Well, it's a positive for they still have the recruiting advantage is what I'm saying. And so when I don't really understand why Nick Saban, who's someone who won
So
7
so
national
so
championships.
the marketing company, would be more interested in an institution that has more fans than an institution that has less fans. After all, this is all about marketing.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
that's where they want to be. That's where the big money is at. And that's why I think Deion Sanders being at Jackson State, he's the leverage that's there. If
Okay.
Deion Sanders wasn't there, those players wouldn't be in the limelight and as much as they are. Think about one of his sons left South Carolina to go to Jackson State, but he's not losing out on any money. His father's there. His father has major connections. Any player, and I think it makes it more fair for those small schools like JSU to become more competitive because they're not banking just on scholarship money now. They can make money outside the sport. So now those good players aren't missing out on money because they go to an HBCU which can't, do full cost of attendance. They can go there and they can make their money in marketing and they can play with people that look like them. They can play at a HBCU. They can stop benefiting these white institutions. It gives the HBCUs an opportunity to compete. And no matter where you go, playing under Deion Sanders, you have a shot to go to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to raise the level of play at HBCU. So a lot of more of these players are going to be able to go to the NFL, get those looks, have those NFL coaches and NBA coaches to go to those games because they don't have to, go straight to Division I school. They can still compete and get really good at what they do.
Claude, let me ask you a question. As a high school athlete, basketball player, female, do you think this NIL will kind of equal things up for female athletes who tend to make less money than their male counterparts?
I do because, as we know, let's focus on female basketball players. WNBA players, when they go professional, they make pennies on the dollars compared to male professional basketball players. And I think that it allow athletes who don't even get to the professional level, female athletes, to use their own name, their own image, their own likeness, and create business opportunities for themselves. And now, because we're in such a social media age where anyone can get on YouTube, they can get on TikTok, they can make their own websites, they can create their own business opportunities. I think it will help to level the playing field between female and male athletes, which I think is a excellent thing. I do want to go back to something that Carrington was saying too about how this could level the playing field for HBCUs as well. This NIL being changed. It's true. And I think that's why maybe the NCAA and some of these other entities are fighting so hard against it. because one of the things that I'm trying to think about, and I think Carrington pointed it out too, is why is the NCAA fighting this so hard? And we know that a lot of the money comes from these larger, white institutions with these larger white athletic programs. But when you have Nick Saban and other people of his caliber coming out and being in opposition, we assume, because he didn't name Travis Hunter, but we assume he was referring to Travis Hunter going to Jackson State. It's like, why? And look, we talk about the black perspective, so I have to pull that in as well. I think, to me, this is analogous to modern day slavery, because white America, these systems have been using our names, images, and likenesses since we got in this country to make money off of us, and that is what these college athletic programs have been doing as well. So this is just the first tipping point to change all of that, and to
Yes.
make it more fair, and to make it where our own images, our own likenesses, what we do on the field, and what we can create our own opportunities and make money for ourselves. So I mean, this is just, it's so fascinating. It's good, and I think it's going down a good direction.
Yeah, I think that it certainly sounds like a plantation type system.
Yeah.
Certainly before these changes were made, when you got majority black players who are giving their bodies for, as you said, pennies on the dollars, while the institutions make billions. And I so appreciated Justice Kavanaugh making that very clear in his concurrent opinion. I may not agree with him on many things,
Not a lot, but that was
but he
good.
got that right and really moved the needle on this case. And so, yeah, Carrington, one other question, and then we're going to kind of wrap this up. Once again, we're so appreciative that you took
Thank
your
you.
time and
Yes.
spent it
you.
with us this afternoon.
Absolutely.
I wanted to get your comments too on female athletes. The same question that I asked Chloe. Do you see this helping out with the disparity between female athlete, earnings versus male athletes? And now I know we are, this has to do only with collegiate athletes. But do you see any hope on the horizon for the female athletes? And second question is, how do you think this will impact professional sports? And third, I'm sorry, I'm piling them on before we let you go.
I hear you.
And the third thing is this lucrative for like the marketing agents, the attorneys who will be representing these young men?
Right.
And
Okay, so
women,
firstly,
young men
in
and women.
terms of young men and women, firstly, I think it's an enormous step towards more equality in terms of compensation between men and women at the college level. Because if you think about it, I think last year at the March Madness tournament, if you look at the men's weight room compared to the women's weight room at the same tournament, and just like the lack of care and
I remember that.
equality there. You remember that
Yeah.
in terms of how that was. But I think that women are out earning men even in this new NIL space because of their followings on Instagram and Twitter. And I think it just is a major advantage for them. I think most companies,
Did you say the women are out earning the
they're
men
out
now
earning.
because of their social media pool?
Yes, especially in more
Wow.
of the individualized sports like gymnastics and golf. Like
True. That's
women,
a good point.
they're doing amazing. And then on top of Instagram and YouTube and being able to monetize their lifestyles and different things like that, there's way more companies that want to market to women than there are men. I think some men I'm seeing more with automobiles and like different health supplements, maybe some clothing companies here and there, but there's so many other products for women to display, and there's so much more deal
That's
opportunity
true.
there
That's
for
very
them.
true.
And so in terms of what was your second question that led into the second question?
How do you think this will impact the professional sports? And third question is this lucrative for the
Yes.
marketing folks, the attorneys, and so forth?
Right. So I think in terms of professional sports, I think we'll have more competent athletes going into the professional level, more people who know how to deal with their taxes, more people who know how to select the right agent relationships. They know when when they're getting scammed, or when they know who they kind of want to work with going into these places, and they also aren't going to be going in for cheap. Most of these players, especially in the NFL, they go in on a rookie deal. Um, so I think they'll be able to take on that publicity much better. Um, and I think that confidence is just gonna dwindle. Like it cascades all throughout, all the way up and down. Because high school players are making money too now, right? So these high schoolers who are playing AAU sports and who are building a
Wow.
major following as big time recruits, they're making money all the way down there. So I think it's a whole new generation of athletes. So the
Wow.
NCAA was just stuck. And so that's how that's going to play. And in terms of being lucrative to professionals and
You
in the
hold,
age,
hold. You just, man, we gotta go. We gotta go. But so this NIL stuff coupled with social media, whoa,
Huge.
yeah,
whoa. I mean, the court had to get this right. The court had to push them to do the right thing, because you're right. There's this kid I watch on YouTube. His name is, I don't know if I'm sure you are. His handle is Destructive.
yeah, destroying.
Destroying, yes,
Yes,
yes. And I
yes,
just started watching him on YouTube, and I saw his story about how he almost made it to the NFL, but according to what I saw, he chose his YouTube channel instead because he couldn't, because under the NCAA rules before this NIL change, he couldn't do both.
right.
And he has a couple million followers
Yes,
on
very
YouTube.
lucrative site. Yes.
Yeah. So now he could actually do both.
hmm
Yeah.
And he's done playing now, but he was one of the people spearheading.
But he's only 24,
Right,
24,
right,
25. I mean, he's still a young man.
absolutely. Yes. So between those changes, and I think agents and lawyers this is absolutely a lucrative market for them to get into. It's the agent business is such a weird business. It's who you know. It's what do you offer. Like what are your resources. I think it would be beneficial for more ethical people to get into the business, to guide these players and to take them under their wing more so than just using them as a way to monetize, their businesses. I think in terms of myself, I want to get into the agent business and teach these young men how to build foundation more so than just getting an NIL deal. Like, how do you set this up for the future? How does your future look 10 years down the line from now? Do you understand the different industries? Do you understand what marketing is? Do you understand trust and, how to set yourself up and investing? I think those are the type of people we need in the business, not ones who are just going to come in and take money from the player.
Well, how do folks get in contact with you?
So you can get in contact with me through Instagram. My handle is just my name, Carrington Vaughn. You can also reach me at
Spell it out for us.
Carrington, Carrington, Vaughn, Vaughn. You can also reach me at carrington.vaughn@gmail.com or on LinkedIn under my name. So if anyone needs any help or direction there, I'd be happy to assist.
And he's the real deal, you all. This is a
Mm-hmm.
fine young brother right here.
Thank
First of all, this is him. He is actually a former Division I football player for a really big school right here, taking it to somebody on this play right here. Okay, I just want to throw that in. Just want to throw that
in. Thanks for the shout out, Mr. Corbett.
Yes, and he is a law graduate and will be practicing law here in just a few minutes. So
Yes.
again, he's the real deal, and most importantly, He is a man of integrity, a man of character. He is a man of God. And so for you parents out there who have these young kids, girls and boys who are upcoming athletes, and you want to connect them with a good mentor, with someone who wants to do them right, someone who knows this business and knows the space, and this is the guy. This is
Truly.
another reason we wanted him up here today. So
Thank you.
yes.
So happy.
absolutely.
It's a privilege to be here with you guys. Thank you for your guidance and your help and your prayers. I appreciate you all so much. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Chloe, you got some closing remarks to close us out?
Man, you said it all, Dad. Carrington, I want to personally thank you for being up here as well. We truly appreciate your insight, your knowledge, all of the information that you provided us and all of our listeners, the Rebels. We want to thank everyone for listening. This is a huge issue, guys, especially for the Black community. Sports has always been instrumental in our community, and now finally some of our young Black men and women may be able to make money at the collegiate level and provide for their families. So we want to thank you all for listening, for joining us today. We're going to be back here next Saturday like we are every Saturday between 1 and 2 Central Standard Time. Remember, this is the only show on YouTube where you have two lawyers talking about legal topics from the Black perspective, from our perspective, a perspective that is missing and that is needed. So we thank you all. We hope you all have a blessed weekend. We're going to see y'all next week. And I'm done. We good?
We're good. Any closing comments, Carrington?
Nah, thank you. Defiant Lawyers.
Yes.